Well, good morning, everybody. We are about to start our webinar, so please join us. We will have an opportunity for questions. Glad to see you are still joining. So Valerie DeBose is here with us today. So Valerie.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon.
Yeah, it's almost afternoon.
It is almost afternoon.
I know.
11 o'clock.
Yeah. So we are very excited to see that we're having a lot of people joining us this morning. And just to take care of some housekeeping items, we have Valerie DeBose, Associate Director of Disability and Support Services, with us today. And as we proceed through our webinar, I just want to remind you a couple of housekeeping items. You will have an opportunity to ask questions through our Q&A section in the very bottom. We may also put some websites and links on our chat, and I'll make sure that you all get those. The webinar will be available for viewing. It is now being streamed live into Facebook, but it will also be available for viewing when we're done on Facebook and within a week with captions on our website, uab.edu, families@uab.edu. I always forget. So the other thing that's very important is at the end of our webinar, you will have an opportunity to answer a survey. And this is very important for us because it allows us to know how we are helping you, find better ways to help you. We hear what you tell us, any other things that you would need from us. So please do take a few minutes. It won't take but 3 to 5 minutes to complete the survey later. So please make sure you take a few minutes at the end of the webinar to complete the survey. So without further ado, Valerie, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carmen. And thank you all for joining me today. Again, my name is Valerie DeBose, and I am the Associate Director here in Disability Support Services at UAB. And I really appreciate everybody joining me. I have some important information to share today for you all to be aware of and for your students to be aware of on how to access academic accommodations here at UAB. We do have some time at the end for questions, so I do want to encourage you to ask questions. If I need to clarify anything, just please feel free to hold those questions to the end, or you can, I think, go ahead and submit those, and we'll get to those at the very end. So again, my name is Valerie DeBose, and I do serve as our Associate Director. And so the purpose of our office here on campus is to ensure that all of our UAB university-appointed programs, activities, courses are accessible for our students with disabilities. So our office serves as the university-appointed person here on campus to ensure that our programs are accessible to our students. So we kind of serve twofold. We serve as a resource for students and getting them connected with accommodations and ensuring that they have an accessible experience. But we also serve as a resource for faculty and staff here on campus and helping them navigate through accommodations, ensuring that they're being compliant when they're working with our students here on campus. We do a lot of trainings with our faculty and staff to ensure that they're aware of what their responsibilities are for providing accommodations. And we also provide some legal guidance to those individuals as well. So we serve sort of twofold. We work with our students, but also our faculty and staff. And we're so lucky here at UAB to have a really great campus community who is aware of what our responsibilities are. We do here at UAB value disability as part of diversity, and it's woven into the mission here on campus. So we are really lucky here on campus to have a great faculty and staff here that are aware of what their responsibilities are for working with our students. We do work a lot with ensuring programs and services are being aware of universal design and ensuring that our courses are accessible. So essentially, our mission is to really ensure that we have a very accessible university experience for our students. To give you all just a little bit of a snapshot of what our student population looks like, we do, at our last count, have over 1,200 students that are registered with disability support services. And this is across campus. We are working with our undergraduate students. We're working with our students who are in professional programs, graduate students, School of Medicine. So we do serve our entire campus community. And we have over 90 different diagnoses that we serve through our office. I think a lot of times when we do orientations or speak to incoming parents and students, they're often thinking that we're serving students with more visible disabilities and are sometimes surprised to learn of the wide variety of conditions, diagnoses that may qualify for services here on campus. So we do have some different disability categories here on this slide that kind of showcase what diagnoses we're working with. But again, it's over 90 different. So we do work with very unique conditions as well. Our biggest population of students that we're serving are students typically with ADHD. We're seeing a huge increase in students with mental health conditions, so like anxiety and depression. We also are seeing a big increase in students with medical conditions as well. So migraines, diabetes, sensory impairments. Obviously, we're working with students with maybe hearing impairments or vision loss, students who might be on the spectrum, TBI, and then mobility impairments. So that's just a little bit of a snapshot of our student population. And 30% of our registered students are in graduate or professional programs. So again, we're working with a lot of students across campus and with some very unique conditions. So our students who come to us may have received accommodations in high school or other academic settings. So they may be coming to us who have received who were on a 504 plan or an IEP. And so one of the things that's different in the post-secondary setting is that students who want to receive accommodations, they do need to self-identify. So in order for a student to be equipped and set up with accommodations, it is the student's responsibility to start the registration process. And they can do that by logging in to the DSS student portal. And our portal is, it's electronic. It's just a very brief application that the student would need to complete. It can be found on our website at uab.edu/DSS, or you can simply Google UAB Disability Support Services, and you'll land on our webpage. There is a button that says DSS Student Portal. And if a student has a UAB Blazer ID and password, they can log in and complete that brief application. And that will initiate the registration process. We also do ask for students to upload documentation of their disability. And so our documentation guidelines vary for each disability category. So we do encourage students and parents to access that information on our website. It is clearly outlined what specific information we do ask to be included in documentation. And this really helps us in our office as we're meeting with students, as we're considering different accommodations. This documentation kind of guides us with what accommodations may be the most helpful for the student while they are here on campus. We do have a lot of students who come to us from high school who may be under IEPs or 504 plans, and that information is incredibly helpful as we are looking at a history of accommodations. And depending on the how comprehensive it is. It may be sufficient as standalone documentation, but we may be asking for some additional information that may be updated or have some extra information that we're going to be needing. So we do encourage students, if they have IEPs or 504 plans, to go ahead and submit that with their application, and then our case managers can kind of walk through and with the student on if there is any kind of pieces of information that we are needing. Our documentation, generally what we're looking for is just for it to be relatively current. We don't have a specific time frame. So it is a little bit case by case, depending on how thorough it is, what the student is requesting, but we do generally look for something relatively current from a qualified evaluator. It's important for assessment information to be included and a clear statement of the student's diagnosis. Documentation is one of the topics that we get the most questions about. So I'm happy to answer questions. If you have more specific questions about your student, I'm happy to share my email at the end and we can talk specifically about students. But overall, I'm in this kind of setting. If you have any general questions about documentation guidelines, please feel free to drop those in the chat and I'd be happy to answer those at the end. But once we've had the documentation and an application, our staff will invite the student to complete or attend an accommodation planning meeting. And that meeting is generally done in person or via Zoom, depending on the student's preference. And in that meeting, we will sit with the student, talk through their documentation, and also just get some general information about the student's strengths and what are some things that they struggle with, so that we can talk about a specific individualized plan for accommodation. So we don't go into it where students with this diagnosis have X, Y, Z. It's very individualized and case by case, depending on a student's unique needs. Parents are welcome to join in that meeting if they would like to, and if students are give permission for the parents to attend. And we do value parent feedback. So we are always welcoming. I think sometimes it's parents wonder that shift from the high school setting and that K through 12 setting to college. While there are some guidelines in terms of what can be shared and what can't be shared, we do want to encourage students to be open to having their parents attend if they want to, so that we can get some of that thorough history as well. And then we ask for students to complete a DSS orientation. So once we've met with the students, determined what their plan for accommodations are, we will have an orientation to kind of talk about what does it look like when a student is ready to send accommodation notices to their faculty, or how do they coordinate testing accommodations in each class. So we will do an overview, because it is very different on how to communicate with faculty and making sure that their accommodations are in place. One of the really important notes that we have on this slide as well is that accommodations are not retroactive. So we say it a lot when we're doing orientations or we're meeting with incoming students, is that it's really, really important that if they may qualify for accommodations, to go ahead and connect with our office if they haven't already done so prior to the start of the semester. That way, everything will be in place by the time they get to the first day of classes, because we cannot go backwards. So if a student decides to wait or not get connected with the office and things don't go as planned and they don't do as well in their classes, we can't go back and retake exams, excuse absences. So we really want to encourage students to go ahead and get registered with the office. A lot of times we see students come to us who think, I want to try it out without accommodations. And we want to discourage that because, again, we can't go back and retroactively allow for those accommodations. It may be that a student gets to a class and decides, I'm good, I don't need to use my extra time. So starting the process early is really, really important. And then I mentioned earlier that IEPs or 504 plans may not be sufficient as standalone documentation, but it's really, really helpful for us. And I do usually encourage students to go ahead and submit that, and then we can determine from there if there's any additional information that we may need. Some examples of accommodations in the post-secondary or college setting are testing accommodations. This is our most common, I think, accommodation that we offer through our office for various diagnoses. And this may be things like extended time, reduced distraction testing environment. If students need to use any kind of assistive technology while they're taking exams, are just some examples of our testing accommodations. We do offer note-taking support, and this may look a little bit different depending on a student's needs, but it may be access to being able to record lectures, being able to use any kind of apps or lecture capturing kind of apps. So it's really going to vary on a student's particular needs. Alternative formats. So if students use any kind of technology, if we may look at paper-based exams and having those be more computerized so that students can use their assistive technology. Attendance flexibility. So if the students have any kind of medical conditions where they may have unexpected flare-ups, kind of having a little bit of a cushion for those classes that might have a little more stricter attendance policies, sign language interpreting and captioning. So again, these are just a snapshot of the accommodations that we offer. We customize each accommodation. So I think we have over 100 different unique accommodations just based on what a student's particular needs are. So coordinating accommodations. This is something that is different in the college setting versus high school. Once a student is registered with the office and we've determined what their approved accommodations are, it is the student's responsibility to notify their faculty member of the accommodations. And they do this through our student portal, which again is kind of that one-stop shop for students to manage, request, and notify faculty members of their accommodations. So each semester, a student logs into our student portal. They select which classes they want to request accommodations in. They can customize accommodation letters, and that system will generate a letter that goes to their faculty member, and that notifies their teachers of their accommodations. That accommodation letter does not have any kind of identifying information about a student's diagnosis or disability. It just simply notifies a faculty member that the student is registered with the office and that they are approved for these accommodations. So once a student has submitted that letter, we do ask students to make an appointment with their instructor or their teacher to go over each accommodation and how it will work in the classroom. And this is really important because every class is unique. And so it's helpful for the student and the faculty member to be on the same page and ensure that it really gives them an opportunity to coordinate accommodations, making sure that the faculty members know what the student's wanting, and that the student is also understanding how to go ahead and implement that in that particular classroom. So the students are asked to schedule an appointment and just to make sure that they're communicating with their faculty member of their accommodation needs. We do encourage students, and we talk about this when we meet with them in their planning stages and the orientation, is that if there's ever any problems or there's any questions about accommodations, or a faculty member who has a question, a faculty member who may say, I don't know if I can provide this accommodation. we encourage students, and you all can help us encourage students to report any problems to DSS. Our office, our responsibility is to, again, be that mediator, to be able to speak with the student and the faculty member if there are ever any kind of concerns about accommodation. So it is something that I know can be hard and difficult for students, but it's so much better for students to let us know as soon as there's an issue than waiting till the end of the semester. And that kind of leads me into the self-advocacy piece too. It's really, really important that students, now that they're at UAB, that they understand what their responsibilities are for requesting accommodations. So again, making sure that they're self-identifying to us and disclosing disability to our office so that we can work together and ensure that they're set up with their accommodation. And it's really prior to coming and getting ready to talk about what those students' accommodation needs. One of the things that we like to encourage students to do is be comfortable with sharing information about their disability with our office and knowing how it impacts them, because them being able to relay that information to us will help us partner better in ensuring that they receive the accommodations that they need. Talking about what's worked in the past, what's not worked in the past, and just being kind of aware of what accommodations they want to request. We understand that this could be a new environment and that they might not realize what all accommodations are available. And that's what our role is to really work with a student to determine what their accommodations are. But if they can help us help them, it will go for a much smoother process. And then again, learning to be comfortable with talking with instructors about their unique accommodation needs so that everything is set up at the beginning and that students are receiving what they need. Confidentiality, again, I've touched on this before a little bit, but all information that a student provides to us is confidential. So it's not going to be shared in any kind of accommodation letter or any kind of correspondence when we're working with faculty to navigate through accommodations. Faculty members are told not to ask about this information as well. So all of the information that students share with us is confidential. We aren't going to share any diagnosis or even the status of a student if somebody is asking about that. So we do want students to rest assured. I know sometimes they're hesitant to get connected with the office because they don't know who's going to know what. So there's not going to be any information on a transcript or a diploma or anything like that. So all of that information, we take confidentiality really seriously. And in terms of parent involvement, like I said earlier, we do really encourage, it is more limited, again, than compared to a high school setting, but we don't completely shut parents out. If a student signs a release and wants us to communicate with parents, we are open to doing so. And then for temporary impairments, so we also work with students who might have something more temporary in nature. So this kind of falls under the category of temporary injuries. While those don't technically qualify under the Americans with Disabilities Act, we still work with students on temporary impairments. So if there's more short-term needs, if a student hurts a dominant writing hand and needs some note-taking assistance, breaks an extremity and might need some assistance kind of getting from class to class, those types of scenarios, those students may qualify for services or want to connect with our office as well in those situations. Those same process, the student, if they do need any kind of short-term accommodations, we do ask for those students also to follow the typical DSS registration process by going onto our website, completing the application and submitting some documentation. And those types of accommodations are generally approved for a semester or less, depending on the extent of the need. So some ways for students to get involved. We do have some student organizations on campus for our students who have disabilities. We have a Disability Honor Society. There's an Advocates Club for our students with disabilities or without disabilities. Our office also hosts various events throughout the year, at least one event during each semester, but we have things like annual wheelchair flag football games, different kinds of workshops, and just various awareness activities throughout the year. So we do want to encourage students to get involved here on campus and just be aware of some of the different ways that they can get involved. So just some contact information. Again, you can find more information about our office on our webpage, which is uab.edu/DSS. We encourage you to ask questions. You can reach our main office email address at dss@uab.edu. Call us. We also have social media. Follow us. We highlight different organizations or workshops that we have and any kind of important announcements. So follow us on, we've got Instagram and Facebook as well. So with that, I think I've left a couple minutes if there's any questions.
So thank you, Valerie. This was very valuable information. While we wait for questions, just a reminder, you will be getting a survey at the end of the webinar, and the webinar will be available for you to view again at your convenience on Facebook, and it will be posted on our website within a week with captions. So at this time, we would like to invite any questions that you have. You may submit them through the Q&A section or also through Facebook. I did have a question prior from a family member who visited us during new student orientation, Valerie. His question was, the student had an evaluation assessment in high school. Would that carry on into college? And you may have mentioned it earlier. I just thought I'd bring it up.
Of course. So we do encourage students, if they had any kind of previous evaluations, to go ahead and, rather than getting a brand new evaluation, because we know that that's very expensive, it's time consuming, is to go ahead and submit what information that they may have previously had. And then what we would do in our office is to review that. Sometimes it meets our guidelines and we don't need any further information. There may be times where there's certain little pieces of information that we may need and that students can maybe easily get that as a follow-up visit. So we do encourage students to go ahead and submit what they've used before. And in terms of accommodations, it's going to depend. High school setting is a little bit different in terms of what accommodations are reasonable versus college. There is a lot of overlap, and a lot of what students received in high school will carry over here at UAB. There are some accommodations, however, that are a little more extensive that may not be reasonable in the college setting. And that could be things like being able to retake exams, or, we have students who may have had an accommodation in high school where if they got a C or lower, they were able to retake. So that's not an accommodation that is reasonable in college. And there's some other just accommodations that may not be reasonable, but for the most part, what students are receiving in high school do generally carry over into college.
Thank you. So at this time, we would like to invite again any questions. You also have the contact information on the screen, so feel free to send an email or call. DSS is always there to help you, especially as students transition into a new environment. Which, while we wait for a question, brings me to, are there any tips or any recommendations you would give to students? Because I know sometimes when they transition to a new environment, or us as parents encourage them to transition and try things. Are there any tips or suggestions that you would give them as they transition with regards to taking care of their needs?
Of course. And I really think, like I said earlier, is getting connected with our office early. Just because we do want to ensure that students are set up for success. So when they get here, I know there's so many things that they're worried about coordinating, and having an accommodation and getting registered with the office is probably just one more thing. So if they can get connected with our office early, we've got a couple weeks still that if they haven't been able to reach out to us, to go ahead and start that process. I do want to mention too that we are always willing to meet with students for informational meetings. So if you're not quite ready to do a registration and submit documentation, if you want to learn a little bit more about us, to go ahead and just reach out. We're happy to talk through what some of the specific services that we offer through our office as well, just to give a little more information prior to the registration.
Thank you. Thank you. And we do have a question. So our attendee is asking, it's been a challenge this summer finding a provider with availability to do an assessment. We were able to find a provider for consultation appointment this week on Tuesday, but the actual testing won't take place until school begins. Can you give any advice regarding that?
That's a really good question. So what we would recommend is for the student, they can go ahead and start our registration process and complete an application and even start an accommodation planning meeting. If a student has any documentation at all, even if it's really old or it's just not a lot of information, submit that. What we can do is work with the student, at least get some of the steps of the process completed. There are times when if the student's documentation doesn't even meet our full guidelines, we may work with students on a provisional basis, meaning that we can provide some temporary accommodations while we're waiting for that assessment information. So we do want to kind of work with students, and we do understand that it takes time to get evaluations. The one thing is, in order for us to do any kind of accommodations, we do have to have a confirmed diagnosis. So if they've had a previous diagnosis, but maybe not have a full evaluation, we may be able to do some short-term accommodations. There also are some resources here on campus, depending on the disability or the nature of the condition. We have student health services or student counseling services who we partner with as well, that sometimes students seek out some assistance through those offices, and we work with those offices on getting documentation as well.
So I think the key word here is just reach out, reach out, send an email, call. Definitely, we're all here to help everybody in this transition. So we still have a few more minutes for a couple of questions. If not, by all means, please feel free to contact DSS at your convenience. They'll be right there willing to help you. And again, we are here to help you transition as you begin your new journey at UAB. So please let us know also at the Office of Off-Campus Student Family Engagement if you have any questions. Our email is families@uab.edu. Please reach out to us with your question. We'll be glad to help you find the right answer. And we are here to connect everybody with our campus. A reminder again, you will be getting a survey. Valerie, is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, I just want to echo what you said is, again, please feel free to reach out. We are here to help bridge that transition. We don't want to be a barrier. So again, we want to work with the student and meet them where they're at. So if you have any specific questions or concerns as you're navigating this transition, please feel free to reach out to us.
Definitely. So we've come to the end of our webinar, and we thank everybody for attending. Again, please submit your questions either to DSS directly, or if you have any other questions related to this transition you're about to embark on. Again, we're here to help you, and we want to make this as smooth as possible. We know it's an exciting time and also a little bit stressful, and so we're here to help you. We understand what you are maybe going through, maybe in different circumstances, of course, but we're here to help you. So please let us know how we can help and assist you. Thank you, Valerie, for joining us this morning. And everybody, we look forward to seeing you soon during move-in days. And please reach out to us if you have any questions. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.